The date is the 29th of March 1989. Margaret Thatcher is in power in Westminster, Charles Haughey is the Taoiseach of Ireland, George W.H. Bush is POTUS, and also Bangles is #1 with Eternal Flame. It is 9:28 p.m. in the Royal Victoria Hospital in Belfast when a little blue baby Smurf was born, 8 pounds 12 ounces. I call myself a baby Smurf because the night before I was born, I decided to have some dance rehearsals in my mummy's tummy for my grand entrance. And during these rehearsals, I wrapped my umbilical cord around my neck. So when I was born the next day, I came out blue and not breathing. It took the doctors quite a while to get me breathing again, but they did, and here I am today. One of my first visitors as a baby was Professor Dornan, Jamie Dornan's dad. This isn't really anything to do with my story, but I thought it was a really good name drop to have in your first moments of life. I grew up in Carrickfergus, which is a little town north of Belfast, and I grew up in a loving family. I'm the baby of 4 kids, and yes, still at 31, I am still very much the baby. I am well looked after by my older siblings. I come from a Christian family. We went to church all the time. My parents are wonderful and very loving people. February 1999, I am now about to turn 10, and I am watching my television in my bedroom on silent, which is what I did for most programs at that time. And something came on Channel 4 called Queer as Folk. This was a program that changed my life. I realized whenever I was quite young that there was something different about me, but this program confirmed what it was. I was gay. And at 9 years old, nearly 10, I didn't fully know what this meant, but I knew that this was not something that I wanted for my life. I believed it was not something that God wanted for my life, and thus began my fight to not be gay. Safe to say, I didn't really win that fight. Imagine if who you were was always celebrated and fully accepted. Cut to summer of my 15th year, and I am a young Christian person attending a Christian youth festival, and on the brochure I see a seminar being held by a psychiatrist which is called Pray the Gay Away. And I decided to attend this because this sounded exactly what I needed. I needed to pray the gay away. Afterwards, I spoke to this psychiatrist and told him that I did not want to be gay. He decided to ask me where I thought something in my life went wrong. Was my mum overbearing? Was my father distant? He taught me how to be more masculine, and thus confirming that I was fundamentally broken. Imagine if children and young people were never made to feel broken. In school, I was not particularly bright, I was not particularly brilliant in school, and also I was a child that loved musicals. I was not a child that loved football. So that in itself was quite difficult, but I was also having to navigate the fact that I had dyslexia and also a severe lack of interest for academia. During my school time, I was quite badly bullied, as most young people are, or especially most young gay people are. And one incident that sticks out in my head was a bully decided to write a death letter to me, a guy who was in my class. And on this letter, he wrote, "Enjoy this, it'll be the last thing you ever watch." Accompanying this letter was a DVD with gay porn on it. I was secretly delighted. But that was absolutely terrifying for being a 15-year-old and knowing that someone wanted me dead because of who I was. But in school, an angel appeared. This angel was my music teacher. Her name was Miss Wilson, or she is now Tracy McLean to me. I am still very much in contact with her, and I owe her a lot. She never judged me for not loving what other boys loved. She never made me feel stupid for not having the reading and writing ability that most other kids in my school did have. And she also recognized that I was being bullied, and she let me seek refuge in the music department every break and lunchtime to avoid me getting emotionally damaged. Imagine if all teachers celebrated and supported all of their pupils like this. We are now jumping a year ahead. I have now left school. I failed my GCSEs fabulously. And I decided to go to college where I would study performing arts Surprise, surprise. And I was living this out and proud life in college in Belfast. And then I got back on the train and I got back in my closet as I headed back to Carrickfergus. And I would not come out of my closet again until I got back to Belfast. This went on for a few months until I got sick and tired of this double life and I decided this was my moment to come out. So I told my parents that I was gay late on in that year, and my parents are brilliant. They dealt with it so wonderfully. They were concerned and a little upset at the thought of what life could be for a young 16-year-old man living in Northern Ireland who is about to enter this gay scene, and that would concern them deeply. But they didn't kick me out. And I had heard all these horror stories of young people being kicked out of their house because their parents didn't fully accept them. And I was prepared for that. The drama queen in me wanted that, and they didn't. So I decided to kick myself out of my house, of course. I move up to Belfast, I'm jumping from sofa to sofa to sofa. I then realise it's getting near December 25th, and if I don't go home, I'm probably not going to get any Christmas presents. So my tail tucked between my legs, I get myself back to Carrick, and I get my Christmas presents. I went through a real turbulent time after I came out. I think most people do. It's such an unnatural thing to have to hide fundamentally who you are for so long and then have to come out and then have to re-find yourself at this stage of your life. So I was turbulent. I probably wasn't the nicest young person. Imagine if we lived in a world where the coming out process was completely unnecessary. I had a great time though. I started hanging about with the popular gays, I hung about with really fabulous drag queens, and I had a great time. I ended up then being quite well known on the Belfast gay scene. I had a few years of that and it was wonderful, and I was out and I was proud and I was partying and I was living my 18, 19-year-old life, and it was wonderful. I also found my love for acting properly, and I found that I was getting paid to be an actor. What is going on? This is the best thing ever. And I got cast in a play called Bison. Bison was opening in Belfast in the November of 2009 before we were going to take it to London in May 2010. We were in rehearsals in September of 2009, and one night after rehearsals I decided to go out to a club with a few friends, and we're partying and the night's coming to a close and I haven't pulled and this is not okay. So I decide to take myself to the gay sauna. I don't remember much of that evening. I don't fully remember going into the sauna. I don't really remember what happened in there, but what I do remember is I woke up the next morning in the sauna and realised that I had definitely had unprotected sex. I have been very good at getting my sexual health checked from I was about 16, from I was sexually active, and I knew that was something very important, especially for gay people to do, was be very, very aware of their sexual health. So I did it without question. So after this night, I decided, well, I must go get myself checked. I wasn't worried about anything. And I went and got tested, and it all came back clear. 2 weeks after that, my nanny passed away, my dad's mum. And it was a hard time for the family, and especially my dad. And then 2 weeks after that, my eldest sister got married, Sarah, to Simon, and that was just the most joyous day. Then, about a week later, my body decided to shut down. I felt awful. I have never felt so sick in my life. It pains to breathe. I was sore all over. My hair hurt, my bones hurt. I felt rubbish. So I decided, for a bit of peace of mind, to go back and get another check done at the gum clinic. That happened on a Thursday, the Thursday before we opened the play Bison. On the Monday following that, I was up at the hospital with my mum, she's a midwife, and I was having breakfast before I went to rehearsals. And sitting at the breakfast table, I received a phone call. I answered, and it was the gum clinic, asking me to come back in to get my bloods retaken. I didn't fully understand what that meant, but my mum had a pretty good idea that her son was about to receive some fairly devastating news. I took myself off to the gum clinic, and I was taken into a side room that I'd never been in before with a health advisor that I'd never met before, and she sat me down and said, "Matthew, the reason we have called you back is because we have found the HIV virus in your blood." I was 20. My life turned on its head. And I don't remember very much of the rest of that conversation. I don't remember really leaving the gum clinic. I think I zombie walked out of there and found myself back at the Royal Maternity Hospital wanting my mum. And I instantly had my mum. And I had my sister, who was also a midwife, there. And we sat and we cried and we phoned around my family, and it was a very difficult morning, but life couldn't stop. I had to carry on. I was opening a play in 3 days' time. Of course I had to carry on. So I jumped on the bus, I headed down to rehearsals, and on my way to rehearsals I messaged my director to say, I think I need to chat with you before we start. And I spoke to her and told her what had just happened, and I then spoke to the cast and told them what just happened. So the director said, right, let's get to rehearsals. We have a scene to finish off. This scene in question was a scene where I had to speak to a man who was in a bar whose partner had died of AIDS. And in this scene, the letters HIV or the words AIDS was said 10 or 12 times. And I could not believe that my director was making me do this after the morning I had just had. And I said to her afterwards, why? Why did you make me do that? And she says, well, you've done it now. You know you can. And that was one of the biggest blessings of those early years of my diagnosis, was she made me face it instantly. Imagine a diagnosis did not need to be burdened by secrecy and shame. We then took Bison to London in May 2010, and it was wonderful. I was an actor living in London. It was what I'd always wanted with my life. And we were there until June of 2010. And then I got back on a plane to Belfast, and as soon as those wheels hit the tarmac of Belfast International Airport, my life went on its head. While I was researching for this talk, I was going back over memories on Facebook, which is a fairly terrifying thing to look at most days. But 10 years ago to the day when I was researching this was the day I got back into Belfast. And my status on that day was, on the 14th of the 7th, 2010, Matthew Cavan wants to fly, but has lost his wings. I then went through a crazy, crazy, crazy time of my mental health. I went through depression. Mirrors were difficult because I looked in a mirror and the reflection that I had back was this, but what was underneath was something completely different. I hated looking in the mirrors. Luckily now, I love looking in the mirrors. Why wouldn't you? Look at me, I'm gorgeous. And it was tough, it really was. And HIV appeared in places that it had never appeared before. So not that I do much reading, as a dyslexic person, it's something I really don't like to partake in. But as well as the letters swimming about pages, those 3 letters, HIV, would just appear out of nowhere when they weren't even there. And it was just this constant reminder. The first 30 seconds of the morning were respite. It was before my brain had woken up, before my brain could kick into action and realise that I was still HIV positive. So 30 seconds of respite for then the rest of the day just to be swarmed with HIV. It's all I could think about. Over the next year, my brain decided that, Matthew, you don't have enough to deal with on your plate. We're going to throw some more stuff at you. So one evening I was lying in my bed, and clear as day, a man appeared in the corner of my room. I genuinely believed he was there. I started hallucinating, and this went on for quite a while. This man was dark, contorted, twisted. He was like a shadow. And he would just stand in the corner of rooms glaring at me, making me feel uncomfortable, unsafe even. Who was he? Where did he come from? Why was he visiting me? The wonderful thing about hindsight is being able to look back, and I realised that the man was definitely my own insecurities around HIV, my internalised fear, the fact that I pretty much blamed myself and I thought that I deserved it. I realise that now. I didn't deserve it. I didn't bring it on myself. These things happen. The man was terrifying. Up to a year after my diagnosis, I still hadn't met anyone living in Northern Ireland with HIV. I felt like I was living on this island alone, by myself, surrounded by people, but living here solitary. So I decided that on World AIDS Day 2011, I needed to do something about this. I went to the Belfast Telegraph and I told them my story, and they ran a double-page spread about this. I wanted to scream it from the rooftops. HIV is happening in Northern Ireland. It is happening to young people in Northern Ireland. Why is HIV such a dirty word here? Why do we not talk about it? And why can I find nothing out about it? I needed to do that. I needed to make a change of the narrative here. I needed people to be talking about this. So I did it, and I think I didn't fully think through the repercussions of what that could really mean by being public about HIV. But imagine if the people suffering did not have to be the teachers. I took 2 years out of my life just to reconfigure, to take some time for myself. The stage was always where I felt most comfortable. I'm an actor, I'm a performer. As I said, I'm a drama queen. I love being in front of people. I love performance, singing, dancing, acting, making a fool of myself. But all of a sudden, the stage was one of the most scariest places for me. My happy place was not so happy anymore, because I did not feel like I could stand up and be happy and be present and perform for people when all this was going on inside me. I felt like an imposter. Until my best friend Neil Carey, actor, director extraordinaire, told me that he was directing a concert version of the Rocky Horror Show in a cabaret club in Belfast, and he needed a Frankenfurter, and he asked me if I would do it. Under no circumstances did I want to do this. But luckily for me, he wouldn't take no for an answer. Neil got me back on stage, doing what I loved, but in a very safe space, because I was in a pair of fabulous heels, very little clothes, a full face of makeup on, and just having fun. And during that production, I think it was the first time in 2 years that I truly laughed from my belly. And I owe him a lot. Not just because he got me back on stage, but because that same cabaret club phoned me on Boxing Day that year, asking me if I would consider doing drag for their New Year's Eve celebrations. I didn't want to do this. Then they offered me money, and I knew I wanted to do it. I did New Year's Eve party, and then they phoned me and said, "Can we have you back in January?" And then they kept me on, and they kept me on. And still to this day, I perform weekly in that cabaret club. And I love it. Cherry on Top was born there. Cherry on Top is my alter ego. She is a much more fabulous, much more glamorous, and much more gorgeous version of this. She's amazing, and she gives me a voice and a platform weekly that I can talk about things like this. I can talk about HIV, and I can make people aware that this is happening weekly. I am a lucky, lucky boy, and I realize that not everyone gets that opportunity. Imagine a world where everyone got the chance to sparkle. After being open about HIV publicly, it didn't go all plain sailing. This one time I did an interview for the TV. It was around World AIDS Day, and I got home that night and I opened up a very famous gay dating app, and a message appeared. I couldn't believe that somebody wanted me dead again because I was being open about who I was. And the things he said in that message to me were horrifying, terrifying, and, it actually made me think in my brain, this should happen. He wanted me dead, and I kind of agreed with him. I didn't feel proud anymore. I didn't feel like I should be screaming it from the rooftop anymore. One troll made me feel like that. And trolling is now something that is very much part of our life. It is happening daily, and more difficult trolling situations happen, and it's getting harder to police. And, only recently we think back to an incredible woman called Caroline Fleck who lost her life due to suicide because of these online trolls. I am the lucky one. I had the support network and the friends around me to help me through it. Imagine if our online and our offline spaces were free from hatred. After I became public, A documentary maker from Dublin phoned me. His name is Nicky Larkin, and he told me that he wanted to make a documentary about me. Well, I was delighted. What, a whole documentary about me? He decided that he wanted it to be called Becoming Cherry because Cherry helped me through so much of my diagnosis. So we made it over 3 days. It is a short documentary. It is 11 minutes long, but it is one of the best 11 minutes that I have ever created. Nicky Larkin and myself then have got to tour parts of the world with this documentary. We have been nominated for numerous awards, and we were, for a while, the toast of film festivals. My story, that little boy from Carrickfergus who never thought he would be accepted was being accepted on a world stage. James Baldwin once said, "The place in which I'll fit will not exist until I make it." I made it, and I now exist, and I now fit, and I fit beautifully. One thing that I found really interesting while doing my research for this was something called kintsugi, I think is what it's called. And that is the Japanese art form of taking broken objects and repairing them with gold. You just paint gold on the broken bits and show the brokenness of whatever it is, the pot. Show the brokenness, but make those broken seams beautiful. Make those broken seams strong. And I think that's such a beautiful way of thinking about being a broken human. I have been broken so many times, but my family and my friends and my support network have always picked up my broken pieces, painted them with gold, and made my broken places beautiful, made them stronger. I think back to that status that I said, Matthew Cavan wants to fly, but has lost his wings. So imagine 10 years on, my wings are covered in gold veins, more beautiful than before. I am soaring, and there is no limits to what I can achieve. I am a happy, well-rounded individual now. I never thought I would get to this place. I never thought I'd get to this day, and I am now doing a TED Talk. Who would have ever thunk it? So in closing, what I want to say is just 2 quotes, and they're both by Ernest Hemingway. The first one is, "The world breaks everyone, and afterwards many are strong in the broken places." He also says, "We are all broken, and that's how the light gets in." Thank you for having me today.